In the vast expanse of the universe, there's one truth the Galactic Consortium never fully grasped. Never, under any circumstances, underestimate species that evolved on death worlds. Especially humans. Especially humans who have just finished their morning coffee and are running late for work. My name is Alex Mercer, and this is the story of how I accidentally became humanity's reluctant ambassador to the stars by being, well, a stubborn asshole who refused to die properly. The day started like any other Tuesday, which is to say terribly. My alarm failed, my shower ran cold, and the cat had left a hairball in my favorite shoes. By the time I stumbled out the door of my apartment complex, I was already 30 minutes late for a meeting that my boss had specifically labeled as career-defining. Little did I know how literal that would become. Piece of garbage phone, I muttered, jabbing at the rideshare app that kept crashing. Rain pattered down around me, because of course it was raining. The universe has a sense of humor that rivals a sadistic toddler's. That's when the world around me shimmered like heat off asphalt, and a circular patch of sidewalk beneath my feet began to glow with an iridescent blue light. I had just enough time to think, that's not normal, before the sensation of being turned inside out and wrung like a wet towel overwhelmed me. The next thing I knew, I was sprawled face down on a metallic floor that hummed with energy. The air smelled like ozone and something vaguely organic, like a combination of hospital antiseptic and freshly cut grass. "Specimen acquired," announced a mechanical voice from somewhere above me. "Commencing hunt preparation sequence." I pushed myself up to my knees, my vision swimming as I took in my surroundings. I was in a translucent cube roughly the size of my living room. Beyond the shimmering walls, I could make out tall insectoid figures moving with deliberate precision around what appeared to be a control center. One of them approached my cube, towering at least 7 feet tall. Its exoskeleton was a glossy black with red markings that reminded me of warning signs. 4 arms extended from its thorax, and its head was dominated by compound eyes that reflected my stunned expression in dozens of tiny mirrors. It clicked its mandibles, not in that threatening movie monster way, but more like someone impatiently tapping a pen during a boring meeting. "Human male," it said, its voice translated through some unseen device. "Age approximately 3 decades. Physical condition." It paused, compound eyes scanning me up and down. "Mediocre at best." "Hey!" I protested before I could stop myself. Sure, I hadn't been to the gym in a few months, okay, years, but mediocre? That was just rude. The alien seemed startled by my outburst, jerking back slightly. "Vocal capability confirmed. Intelligence assessment pending." It made some notes on a translucent tablet. "Where am I? What is this place?" I demanded, finding my feet at last. The cube was just tall enough for me to stand upright, which somehow made the situation even more demeaning. The alien ignored my questions, continuing its assessment. "Aggression levels within acceptable parameters. Survival instinct appears functional." It turned to a colleague, a similar being with blue markings instead of red. "This one should provide adequate sport for junior hunt qualification." Blue markings clicked its mandibles in what I somehow knew was agreement. "The Zekthari delegation will be pleased. They've been wanting to test their offspring against Earth predators." Red markings made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Hardly predators. The humans are barely above prey classification. Their only noteworthy trait is their tendency toward unpredictable behavior when cornered." I pressed my hands against the transparent wall. "I can hear you, you know." Both aliens turned to look at me, their compound eyes reflecting the harsh lighting of their control room. "Yes," red markings said simply. "That is expected. Your comprehension is necessary for the hunt to have sporting value." "Hunt?" The word hung in the air between us, heavy with implications. "Indeed," blue markings explained, as if discussing the weather. "You have been selected to participate in the junior qualification hunt for the Zekthari delegation. It is quite an honor, really. Most species are only used for advanced hunts." "An honor," I repeated flatly. "To be hunted." "Precisely," red markings confirmed, apparently missing my sarcasm entirely. "The hunt will commence in 3 planetary rotations, after you have been transported to the game preserve on Nexus 7. You will be provided with basic survival materials and released 12 hours before the hunting party begins tracking you." "And if I refuse to be hunted?" The aliens exchanged what I could only interpret as confused glances. "Refusal is not an option programmed into the hunt protocols," blue markings explained slowly, as if to a particularly dense child. "You are the quarry. The quarry does not refuse the hunt." "Watch me," I said, crossing my arms. Red markings clicked its mandibles in what seemed like amusement. "Fascinating. The human displays the exact psychological profile predicted by the consortium studies. Defiance in the face of overwhelming odds. This will make for excellent training for the young hunters." I was about to tell them exactly where they could shove their hunt when a shimmering field descended over my cube. and unconsciousness claimed me once more. I woke up with a splitting headache and the taste of pennies in my mouth. The cube was gone, replaced by a small clearing surrounded by alien vegetation. Trees, if you could call them that, spiraled upward with spiral-patterned bark in shades of purple and blue. The ground beneath me was covered in something like moss, but it pulsed gently with bioluminescence where my weight compressed it. Next to me lay a small pack. Inside, I found what appeared to be a water container, some form of nutrient bars that looked about as appetizing as compressed cardboard, a thin thermal blanket, and a small knife that wouldn't have been out of place in a child's camping kit. "Gee, thanks," I muttered, pocketing the knife. "Really generous of you to give me a weapon that couldn't cut through warm butter." A holographic projection suddenly appeared above the pack, startling me backward. Red marking's insectoid face flickered in the air. "Human quarry," it began formally. "You have been provided with standard survival implements appropriate to your species' capabilities. The hunt will commence in exactly 12 Earth hours. The preserve boundaries are marked by red illuminated pillars. Crossing the boundary will result in immediate disqualification and termination." "Termination as in?" I left the question hanging. "Cellular disruption," red markings clarified helpfully. "What your species would call death." "Right, of course." I sighed. "So my choices are run around in your game preserve until I'm caught and killed, or try to escape and be killed automatically." "Your comprehension is adequate," red markings confirmed. "Though you neglect the third option." "Which is?" "Evade capture for the designated hunt period of 3 planetary rotations. Should you succeed, you will be returned to your planet with compensatory memory adjustment." "You'll wipe my memory?" "Naturally. The consortium cannot allow knowledge of our activities to spread among pre-contact species. It would disrupt the natural development paradigm." I ran a hand through my hair, trying to process everything. "And how many humans have successfully evaded capture for the full hunt period?" Red markings paused, its mandibles clicking rapidly in what I was beginning to recognize as its thinking gesture. "That information is not relevant to your situation." "So none," I translated. "The statistical probability of your survival is approximately 0.034%, red marking stated. "However, the Zikathari young are on their first hunt, which improves your odds marginally." "Gosh, that's comforting." "Your sarcasm indicators are noted but unnecessary," red markings replied. "Prepare yourself, human. The countdown has begun." The hologram flickered out, leaving me alone in the alien forest. "Well, Alex," I said to myself, "you always wanted an excuse to miss that meeting." I spent the next hour taking stock of my surroundings. The forest extended in all directions, with no obvious landmarks besides the occasional red pillar marking the boundaries that red markings had mentioned. The light came from what appeared to be 2 small suns in the sky, casting bizarre double shadows behind everything. The gravity felt slightly lighter than Earth's, which gave me a spring in my step that might prove useful. The air was breathable, but had an odd sweetness to it, like breathing through a cinnamon-scented candle. I decided my first priority was finding a defensible position and additional resources. The pitiful supplies they'd given me wouldn't last 3 days, and the knife was an insult more than a tool. I needed to understand this environment better if I had any chance of surviving. As I hiked through the underbrush, I noticed something odd about the plants. Many of them seemed to react to my presence, either by slightly recoiling or, more worryingly, by leaning toward me as I passed. The moss-like ground covering continued to glow in my footsteps, effectively marking my trail for anyone following. "Great," I muttered. "The plants are literally snitching on me." I eventually found a small stream of clear, purplish water. I wasn't desperate enough to drink it yet, but I followed its course, reasoning that water sources were good places to find both food and shelter. The stream led me to a cluster of rock formations that jutted out from the forest floor like giant's teeth. Among the rocks, I discovered a narrow crevice that widened into a small cave. It wasn't ideal, but it offered more protection than standing in the open. More importantly, the rocky ground wouldn't record my movements like the bioluminescent moss. I settled in to examine my weapons more carefully. The knife, as expected, was practically useless, barely sharp enough to cut the wrapper on the nutrient bars. The bars themselves tasted like someone had compressed sawdust and artificial banana flavoring into a rectangular prism of sadness. "5-star accommodation this is not," I grumbled, choking down half a bar before rewrapping the rest. As the hours passed, I found myself oddly calm. Perhaps it was shock, or maybe the strange air was affecting me. But instead of panic, I felt a growing anger. These aliens had plucked me from my life without consent, dropped me in an environment designed to kill me, and expected me to play along with their sick game. Well, screw that. If there's one thing humans excel at, It's being absolutely, irrationally stubborn when we feel we've been wronged. And I had definitely been wronged. "You want to hunt?" I said to the empty air. "Let's make it interesting." The first sign that the hunt had begun was a distant, high-pitched wailing that echoed through the forest. It sounded ceremonial, like a hunting horn from some bizarre alien tradition. I had used my time to prepare as best I could, fashioning crude traps around my cave hideout using vines and rocks. I'd discovered that some of the spiral-barked trees contained a sticky sap that, when it dried, became remarkably adhesive. I'd collected as much as possible, using it to augment my traps. I'd also found that some of the more aggressive plants could be provoked into releasing defensive spores that caused a nasty rash on my skin where they landed. With careful harvesting using leaves as gloves, I managed to collect some of these spores. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. The hunting party made no effort to be stealthy. I could hear them crashing through the underbrush, clicking and chirping to each other in their alien language. From the sounds, I guessed there were at least 5 of them, possibly more. I stayed hidden in my cave, controlling my breathing as their sounds grew closer. The glowing moss would have led them directly to this area, but the rocky terrain around the cave entrance should have obscured my exact location. The alien hunters came into view, and I got my first good look at the Zekthari. They resembled the insectoid aliens who had captured me but were smaller, perhaps 5 feet tall rather than 7, and their exoskeletons were a mottled green and brown pattern that blended with the forest. Each carried what looked like a spear with an energy field humming around its tip, and they moved with the awkward enthusiasm of teenagers trying to act tough. 6 of them spread out around the rocks, clicking excitedly to each other as they examined the glowing footprints that led to this area. A 7th, slightly larger Zekthari appeared to be supervising, occasionally clicking its mandibles in what I took to be instructions or corrections. I remained perfectly still as one of the young hunters approached my cave. It paused at the entrance, its antenna waving as if testing the air. Then it chirped excitedly and raised its spear, preparing to thrust it into the darkness where I hid. That's when my first trap triggered. A collection of heavy rocks I'd balanced precariously above the cave entrance came crashing down, catching the young hunter squarely on its thorax. It emitted a high-pitched squeal as it collapsed under the weight. Not dead, judging by its continued movement, but definitely incapacitated. The others reacted with alarm, chittering and clicking as they raised their weapons. The supervisor rushed forward, pulling the injured young one from beneath the rocks, and examining it with what appeared to be concern. I used the distraction to slip deeper into the cave system I'd discovered, navigating by touch through a narrow passage that opened into a larger cavern. From there, a fissure in the rock led to another exit on the far side of the formation. As I emerged into the forest again, I could hear the hunting party in disarray. The supervisor was clicking rapidly, probably giving instructions for treating their injured comrade and reorganizing the hunt. I didn't wait around to see what they'd do next. I took off at a run, using the lighter gravity to cover ground quickly, while trying to stay on rocky surfaces as much as possible to avoid leaving glowing footprints. My mind raced as I ran. These weren't the efficient predators I'd feared. They were students, apprentices on their first hunt. The supervisor was experienced, certainly, but the young ones made mistakes. They were overconfident, noisy, and unprepared for prey that fought back. I could use that. After putting some distance between myself and the hunting party, I slowed to assess my situation. The twin suns were beginning to set, casting long, strange shadows through the forest. The temperature was dropping rapidly, and many of the plants were folding in on themselves, as if preparing for night. New sounds emerged from the darkening forest, whistling calls, rustling movements, the occasional splash from the stream. This environment had its own ecosystem, its own predators and prey. I was an intruder here, but so were the Zekthari hunters. I found a tall spiral tree with low-hanging branches and climbed it, reasoning that elevation would provide both safety from whatever roamed the forest floor at night, and a vantage point to spot the hunters if they pursued me in the darkness. From my perch, I watched as bioluminescent creatures emerged with the darkness. Floating jellyfish-like organisms drifted between the trees, pulsing with gentle blue light. Small, 6-legged creatures scurried along branches, their eyes glowing red in the darkness. The forest was beautiful in an alien way, and for a moment I forgot my dire situation. That moment ended when I spotted the hunting party in the distance, their forms illuminated by portable lights they now carried. They had regrouped and were tracking me methodically, following the trail of glowing footprints I'd left before I started avoiding the moss. They were being more cautious now, moving in a formation that suggested they'd learned from their earlier mistake. The injured one was absent, presumably left behind to recover. I needed a new plan. Running and hiding wouldn't work forever, especially not with the environment itself betraying my movements. I needed to go on the offensive. I spent that first night in the tree, dozing fitfully while secured to the trunk with vines I'd woven together. The Zekthari hunting party eventually gave up their pursuit as the darkness deepened, setting up what appeared to be a camp about half a mile from my position. By morning, if you could call it that when two suns rose in staggered intervals, I had formulated a strategy. It was risky, possibly suicidal, but it was better than waiting to be caught. I was going to hunt the hunters. My first order of business was to create a better weapon. The little knife they'd given me was a joke, but the environment provided alternatives. I'd noticed that the spiral trees, when broken, revealed a core of surprisingly hard crystalline material. After several hours of work, I managed to fashion a crude but effective spear by lashing a sharp shard of this crystal to a straight branch using vines and the adhesive sap. Next, I needed to understand my opponents better. I spent the morning shadowing the hunting party from a distance, observing their patterns and behaviors. The young Zekthari were disciplined in formation but easily distracted by unusual forest phenomena. They stopped frequently to examine interesting plants or creatures, much to the apparent frustration of their supervisor, who clicked its mandibles impatiently during these delays. More importantly, I noticed they relied heavily on technology. Each carried what appeared to be a scanning device that they consulted regularly, presumably to track me. Their communication was a mixture of clicks and chirps, but they also used small wrist-mounted devices that projected holographic displays. They had advantages in technology, numbers, and knowledge of the environment. I had desperation and a pointy stick. Not great odds, but I'd worked with worse. Well, actually I hadn't, but it sounded good as a pep talk. My plan was simple: divide and conquer. I needed to separate the young hunters from their supervisor and take them out one by one, reducing the odds against me. The supervisor was clearly the most dangerous, experienced, focused, and probably better armed. The young ones were the weak links. I put my plan into action that afternoon. First, I deliberately left a trail of footprints in the glowing moss, leading toward a dense thicket of particularly reactive plants I'd discovered. These plants shot out barbed tendrils when disturbed, not lethal to something with an exoskeleton, but definitely painful and distracting. Then I circled back through rocky terrain and climbed a tree overlooking the trail, waiting with my makeshift spear. It didn't take long for the hunting party to discover my trail. They followed it cautiously, the young ones chirping excitedly as they detected fresh signs of their quarry. The supervisor held back slightly, its head tilting in a way that suggested suspicion. Smart, but not smart enough. As the first three young hunters entered the thicket, following my trail, the plants reacted violently. Barbed tendrils whipped out, wrapping around limbs and torsos. The Zekthari screeched in alarm, thrashing against the unexpected attack. The supervisor and remaining two young ones rushed forward to help their companions, exactly as I'd hoped. As they focused on freeing the ensnared hunters, I made my move. I dropped from the tree directly onto one of the untrapped young hunters, driving my crystalline spear into the junction between its head and thorax. The exoskeleton cracked with a sound like breaking pottery, and the young Zekthari collapsed without a sound. The remaining free hunter whirled toward me, raising its energy spear with a screech of alarm. I rolled away as it thrust, the energy field at the tip sizzling as it passed inches from my face. The smell of ozone filled my nostrils as I scrambled to my feet, abandoning my embedded spear to grab a rock from the ground. The supervisor turned from the entangled hunters, its compound eyes fixing on me with what I could only interpret as shock. It raised a device on its wrist and began clicking rapidly into it, calling for backup, I assumed. I couldn't let that happen. I hurled the rock with all my strength, striking the device. It sparked and went dark, earning me a furious series of clicks from the supervisor. The free young hunter charged me again, more carefully this time. I backed away, looking for an opening. My heart hammered in my chest, adrenaline making everything hyper-focused. Time seemed to slow as the hunter lunged. I sidestepped, grabbing the shaft of its energy spear and using the hunter's momentum to direct it past me. As it stumbled forward, I wrenched the weapon from its grasp and swung it around, the energy field slicing through the young Zekthari's midsection. It fell in two pieces, green ichor spilling onto the glowing moss, which brightened in response to the fluid. The supervisor was on me in an instant, moving with a speed and precision the young ones lacked. It struck me with one of its forearms, sending me flying into a spiral tree. Pain exploded across my back as I collided with the hard bark. The energy spear went spinning from my grasp, deactivating as it hit the ground. The supervisor advanced on me, producing a small cylindrical device from a compartment in its exoskeleton. It pointed the device at me, and a thin red beam emitted from its tip. I rolled desperately to the side as the ground where I'd been sitting erupted in a shower of dirt and stone. The supervisor adjusted its aim, the red beam tracking my movement. I scrambled behind the spiral tree as another blast tore chunks from its trunk. Splinters of crystalline core material showered around me, one slicing a shallow cut across my cheek. The 3 hunters trapped by the plant tendrils were still struggling, their screeches providing a chaotic backdrop to my fight for survival. I knew I couldn't take on the supervisor in direct combat. It was too fast, too skilled, and better armed. I needed a new plan fast. Glancing around desperately, my eyes fell on the fallen energy spear. It lay deactivated about 15 feet away, directly in the supervisor's line of sight. There was no way I could reach it without being shot. Unless I grabbed a handful of the defensive spores I'd collected earlier from my pocket. With a silent prayer to whatever gods might exist in this corner of the galaxy, I darted from behind the tree, hurling the spores directly at the supervisor's compound eyes. The reaction was immediate and satisfying. The supervisor dropped the cylindrical weapon, its 4 hands flying to its eyes as it emitted a high-pitched keening sound. I didn't waste the opportunity, diving for the energy spear and reactivating it with a twist of its shaft. The supervisor was already recovering, its outer eyelids having protected it from the worst of the spore's effects. It reached for a backup weapon at its side, but I was faster. I drove the energy spear forward with all my strength, the humming field at its tip penetrating the supervisor's exoskeleton just below where I guessed its equivalent of a sternum would be. The spear sank deep, the energy field cauterizing the wound even as it created it. The supervisor froze, its mandibles clicking rapidly but more quietly now. It looked down at the spear protruding from its thorax, then back at me. Something like recognition flickered in those compound eyes. "Not prey," it managed in that mechanical translated voice before collapsing. I stood there, breathing heavily, the reality of what I'd just done washing over me. I'd killed 2 sentient beings and mortally wounded a 3rd. Self-defense or not, the weight of that settled in my stomach like a stone. But I didn't have time for moral crises. The 3 trapped young hunters were still very much alive and would eventually free themselves. I needed to press my advantage. I retrieved the supervisor's cylindrical weapon and figured out its trigger mechanism through careful experimentation. Then I approached the trapped hunters, who froze at the sight of me armed with their own technology. "Here's how this is going to work," I said, knowing they probably understood me through whatever translation technology they possessed. "I'm not going to be your prey anymore. You're going to help me get off this planet and back to Earth. If you don't..." I raised the weapon meaningfully. One of the trapped hunters clicked its mandibles rapidly, antennae quivering. "Human," it said through its translator. "This violation of hunt protocols is unprecedented." "Yeah, well, I'm full of surprises," I replied grimly. "Now, which one of you knows how to contact your ship?" The next few hours were a blur of tense negotiation and careful maneuvering. I freed one of the young hunters, keeping the others as insurance, and made it clear that cooperation was their only option for survival. Their adolescent bravado had evaporated in the face of their supervisor's death and their companion's defeat. The freed hunter, who introduced itself as Tixor, explained that they had a communication device that could signal their ship, but it was back at their base camp. I allowed Tixor to lead me there, keeping the weapon trained on it at all times. The camp was rudimentary but equipped with alien technology far beyond anything I'd seen on Earth. A small shuttle was parked in a clearing, their way on and off the game preserve. Various devices and containers were arranged around a central console that pulsed with holographic displays. "Signal your ship," I instructed Tixor, keeping a safe distance as it approached the console. The young hunter hesitated, its mandibles clicking nervously. "The hunt directors will not be pleased." "I'm not particularly pleased about being kidnapped and hunted for sport," I countered. "Signal them." Tixor manipulated the console, and a holographic projection appeared above it. Red Marking's insectoid face materialized, looking irritated until it registered what it was seeing. "Young Hunter Tixor," Red Markings began, "explain why you are initiating unscheduled contact during an active hunt." It stopped abruptly, compound eyes focusing on me standing behind Tixor, holding the supervisor's weapon. "Human quarry, this is unexpected." "Hi there," I said with forced casualness. "There's been a slight change of plans. I've decided I don't want to be hunted anymore." Red Marking's mandibles clicked rapidly. "This is highly irregular. Where is Hunt Supervisor Viknar?" "Taking a permanent nap," I replied coldly, "along with 2 of your young hunters." The alien was silent for a long moment, its compound eyes unreadable. "You have killed a Hunt Supervisor and 2 junior hunters?" "Self-defense," I said. "They were trying to kill me, remember?" "But you are prey," Red Markings said, as if explaining something obvious. "That is the natural order." "Not anymore." I raised the weapon. "Now here's what's going to happen. You're going to send a ship to pick us up, and then you're going to take me back to Earth. If you don't, I'll kill the remaining young hunters and take their shuttle. I'm guessing it has some kind of autopilot I can figure out. Another long silence followed. Red Marking's antennae twitched, and I could almost see the calculations happening behind those alien eyes. This is unprecedented, it finally said. No species has ever... First time for everything, I interrupted. What's it going to be? Red Markings clicked to someone off screen, then returned its attention to me. A retrieval vessel will be dispatched. Coordinates are being transmitted to the camp console. Do not harm the remaining young hunters. They are the offspring of high-ranking Zekthari officials. They'll stay alive as long as your retrieval vessel actually shows up, I assured it, and comes unarmed. Compliance is noted, Red Markings said stiffly. Retrieval in approximately 3 hours. The hologram flickered out, leaving me alone with the terrified young hunter. Your hunt supervisor said something before he died, I told Tixor. He said not prey. What did he mean by that? Tixor's mandibles clicked softly. I do not know. Perhaps he recognized that you are different from our usual quarry. Different how? Most prey runs, some fight when cornered. Tixor's antennae drooped slightly. None hunt the hunters. True to Red Marking's word, a retrieval vessel appeared 3 hours later, descending through the atmosphere with a low hum. It was larger than the shuttle at the camp, with sleek lines that suggested speed and efficiency. I had secured the remaining young hunters with their own restraints, which I'd found among their equipment. They sat huddled together, clicking quietly to each other in their native language that the translation devices didn't convert. The retrieval vessel landed in the clearing beside the camp, and a ramp extended from its side. Red Markings emerged, flanked by 2 larger aliens that I assumed were security personnel. All 3 froze at the sight of me holding the weapon on their young charges. The human quarry appears to have adapted to our technology with surprising speed, Red Markings observed, its tone somewhere between annoyed and impressed. Quick learner, I said. Now we're going to board your ship nice and easy, no sudden moves. Red Markings tilted its head. And then? Then you take me home. The consortium does not return quarry to their home planets, Red Markings stated. It violates our non-interference protocols. You violated those protocols when you abducted me, I pointed out. And I think we're well beyond standard procedures at this point, don't you? Red Markings clicked its mandibles thoughtfully. Perhaps an exception could be made. Your situation is unique. I didn't like the calculating look in those compound eyes, but I didn't have much choice. My leverage was limited to the young hunters, and once aboard their ship, even that might not be enough. Fine, I said. Let's go. The boarding process was tense but uneventful. The young hunters were escorted to what I assumed was a medical bay, while Red Markings led me to a command center filled with holographic displays and chittering alien technicians who fell silent as I entered. You have caused quite a disruption, human, Red Markings said as we stood before a large viewport showing the game preserve from above. From this height, I could see that it was just one of many similar enclosures on what appeared to be a massive space station or artificial habitat. That wasn't my intention, I replied honestly. I just wanted to survive. And in doing so, you have inadvertently triggered a diplomatic incident of unprecedented proportions. Red Markings gestured to a holographic display showing what appeared to be angry Zakthari officials. The parents of the deceased young hunters are demanding explanations. The Consortium Council is convening an emergency session. I'm sorry about the young ones, I said, surprising myself with my sincerity. They were just doing what they were taught, but I'm not sorry for fighting back. Red Markings studied me for a long moment. No, I suppose you wouldn't be. It manipulated some controls, and the viewport changed to show a view of deep space. The Consortium has maintained the Great Hunt for 17 millennia. In all that time, no quarry species has ever reversed the roles so thoroughly. Maybe you've been hunting the wrong species, I suggested. Or perhaps the right one, in the wrong way. Red Markings clicked thoughtfully. The hunt supervisor's final report transmission included a curious observation. He classified you not as prey, but as a fellow predator. This complicates matters. How so? Consortium law is clear. Predator species cannot be used as quarry. It violates the natural order and the sporting ethics of the hunt. Red Markings' mandibles twitched in what might have been amusement. By successfully hunting your hunters, you have taxonomically reclassified your entire species. I blinked, trying to process this. So, humans can't be hunted anymore? Not legally, no. Red Markings manipulated more controls, and the ship hummed as it accelerated away from the station. The Consortium Council will debate this at length, of course. There will be objections, appeals, scientific committees formed to evaluate the classification criteria. But for now, at least, your kind has earned a reprieve. And what about me? Red Marking's compound eyes reflected the starlight from the viewport. You present a unique problem. You have knowledge of extraterrestrial life, consortium activities, and our technology. Normally, this would necessitate memory adjustment before return. But, I prompted, sensing there was more. But your actions may have inadvertently forced an acceleration of the consortium's plans regarding Earth. Your species was already on the observation list for potential future contact. Recent environmental and technological developments on your planet had moved that timeline forward considerably. You were planning to reveal yourselves? Eventually. Perhaps within the next Earth decade. Red Markings clicked its mandibles. Your situation may require us to expedite certain protocols. A sinking feeling developed in my stomach. What exactly does that mean? It means Alex Mercer, Red Markings said, using my name for the first time. That you may become the first human diplomatic liaison to the Galactic Consortium. The journey back to Earth took less time than I expected. Apparently, faster-than-light travel was very much a reality for the Consortium. As we approached the familiar blue marble of my home planet, Red Markings explained the situation in more detail. The Consortium has observed Earth for centuries, it said, manipulating controls that brought up holographic displays of human history. Your species has been categorized as potentially viable for future integration due to your adaptability and technological development rate. And our tendency to fight back when kidnapped for alien hunting games, I added dryly. Red Marking's mandibles clicked in what I was beginning to recognize as its version of a chuckle. That quality is being reevaluated in light of recent events. The displays showed scenes from human history, wars, technological breakthroughs, space exploration. I noticed they had footage of events I didn't recognize, suggesting their observation had been quite thorough. So what happens now? I asked, watching a holographic Earth rotate slowly before me. You drop me off with a thanks for participating trophy and zip back to space? Not quite. Red Markings turned to face me directly. The Consortium Council has made a preliminary decision. You will be returned to Earth as an unofficial cultural liaison. You will retain your memories, but will be implanted with a communication device that allows you to contact us. Your role will be to prepare the way. Prepare the way for what? Official first contact. The Consortium has decided to accelerate the timeline in light of your species' reclassification as predatory intelligence. Red Markings manipulated another control, bringing up a timeline. Within 5 of your Earth years, the Consortium plans to make official diplomatic contact with your world governments. I stared at the alien, trying to process the magnitude of what it was saying. And until then, I'm just supposed to go back to my normal life knowing that aliens exist and are planning to reveal themselves? Your life will not be normal by previous standards, Red Markings acknowledged. But we will not leave you without support. Regular communication will be maintained. Resources will be provided to ensure your financial stability, allowing you to focus on your liaison duties. What duties exactly? Observation. Cultural interpretation. Preparation of selected individuals who might react poorly to the revelation of extraterrestrial intelligent life. Red Markings' compound eyes studied me. Your species is prone to panic when confronted with the unknown. We hope to mitigate that through careful preparation. And if I refuse? Then standard memory adjustment protocols would be implemented. Red Markings stated matter-of-factly. You would remember nothing of your experience and would be returned to the exact moment of your abduction with no awareness of the time that has passed. I considered this. On one hand, forgetting everything might be easier. I could go back to my ordinary life, worrying about mundane things like being late for meetings rather than interstellar diplomacy. On the other hand, the knowledge I now possessed, that humanity wasn't alone in the universe, was too profound to willingly surrender. Plus, there was a certain satisfaction in knowing I'd forced an entire alien civilization to reconsider their view of humanity. I'll do it, I decided. But I have conditions. Red Markings' antennae twitched. Conditions? First, no more hunting humans. Ever. Not for sport, not for science, not for anything. That has already been established by your species reclassification, Red Markings pointed out. Second, I want regular updates on what the Consortium is doing regarding Earth. No surprises. Acceptable, within security parameters. Third, I continued, warming to my role as humanity's impromptu negotiator. I want technology. Nothing that would drastically alter Earth's development trajectory, but medical tech. Cures for diseases, clean energy solutions, things that would help us without making us dependent on you. Red Markings was silent for a long moment, its mandibles clicking slowly as it considered. Limited technology transfer may be possible, subject to consortium approval. Such transfers would need to appear to be of Earth origin to maintain non-interference protocols. Fine. And finally, I want guarantees that Earth won't be colonized, exploited, or otherwise harmed by the consortium or its member species. The consortium does not engage in colonization of inhabited worlds, Red Markings stated, sounding almost offended. We are not conquerors, Alex Mercer. We are facilitators. The galaxy is vast, but life is precious. Our purpose is to nurture emerging intelligent species, not to subjugate them, says the civilization that kidnapped me for a hunting game, I pointed out. Red Markings' mandibles clicked rapidly. The Great Hunt was, a tradition predating the modern consortium. It has cultural significance to several member species, particularly the Zakthari. But perhaps it is time for traditions to evolve. You think? I said sarcastically. Your point is acknowledged, Red Markings conceded. The events surrounding your abduction will prompt a re-evaluation of certain consortium practices. Change comes slowly to a civilization spanning thousands of worlds, but it does come. I looked back at the view screen showing Earth growing larger as we approached. So how exactly do you plan to put me back? I'm guessing you don't just land this thing in Central Park. We have more subtle methods, Red Markings assured me. You will be returned via matter transportation to the exact location of your abduction. Chronologically, less than an hour will have passed in Earth time since you were taken. Wait, I'll still make my meeting? I laughed at the absurdity of it. After everything that's happened, I'll still have to face my boss? Your previous life commitments remain unchanged, Red Markings confirmed, missing the humor entirely, though perhaps your perspective on them has altered. You could say that, I murmured, thinking about how insignificant that career-defining meeting seemed now. As the ship entered Earth orbit, technicians busied themselves at various stations, preparing for what I assumed was my return journey. Red Markings led me to a chamber similar to the one I'd been abducted in, a translucent cube with a humming floor. The communication implant is painless, it assured me, holding up a small device that looked like a metallic droplet. It will bond with your brainstem and remain dormant until activated. You need only subvocalize the activation phrase "open channel" to establish contact. And how will I know who I'm talking to? I asked suspiciously. I will be your primary contact, Red Markings said, though my actual designation is Consortium Cultural Exchange Officer Zekaresh. Red Markings, as you call me, is acceptable as an informal address. Well, Red Markings, I said, stepping into the cube. This has been the strangest Tuesday of my life. For what it is worth, Red Markings said, its voice taking on an almost solemn tone. You have earned the respect of the consortium through your actions. Few species have demonstrated such tenacity when faced with insurmountable odds. That's humans for you, I replied. We're stubborn like that. Indeed. Red Markings manipulated a control panel beside the cube. We will speak again soon, Alex Mercer. Prepare yourself for return transportation. The familiar sensation of being turned inside out washed over me, and the alien ship dissolved from view. I materialized exactly where I'd been taken, standing on the rain-soaked sidewalk outside my apartment building. My phone was still in my hand, the rideshare app frozen mid-crash. As I watched, it unfroze and continued functioning as if nothing had happened. A quick check of the time confirmed what Red Markings had said. Less than an hour had passed. I was still late for my meeting, but not catastrophically so. I stood there for a moment, rain pattering around me, trying to process everything that had happened. Had it been real? The only evidence was a small, tender spot at the base of my skull where the communication implant had been placed, and the lingering muscle soreness from my fight with the Zakthari hunters. Well, I muttered to myself, that's one way to put a work meeting in perspective. I hailed a cab the old-fashioned way, with a raised arm rather than the temperamental app, and directed the driver to my office building. During the ride, I stared out at the bustling city streets, seeing everything with new eyes. Humans scurried about their daily lives, completely unaware that they shared the galaxy with countless other intelligent species. Unaware that until a few hours ago, from my perspective, they had been classified as potential prey by an interstellar civilization. Unaware that thanks to my stubbornness and refusal to die properly, that classification had changed. I wondered how many other humans had been taken over the years. How many had failed to escape the hunt? How many strange disappearances throughout history might have been explained by the consortium's Great Hunt? When I arrived at my office building, I rode the elevator up to the 14th floor in a daze. My colleague Thomas gave me an odd look as I passed his desk. "You look like you've seen a ghost, Alex," he commented. "Meeting nerves?" "Something like that," I mumbled, continuing to my own desk to drop off my bag before heading to the conference room. My boss, Richard, was already there with the client, both looking mildly annoyed at my tardiness. "Nice of you to join us, Alex," Richard said with barely concealed irritation. "I was just telling Mr. Wilson about our strategy for the campaign launch." "Sorry I'm late," I said automatically, taking a seat. "It's been an unusual morning." For the next hour, I went through the motions of the meeting, presenting my part of the marketing campaign that had seemed so important yesterday. I nodded at the right times, answered questions, and even managed to secure the client's approval for our approach. But the whole time, my mind was elsewhere, orbiting Earth in an alien vessel, fighting for my life on an extraterrestrial game preserve, negotiating with insectoid beings for humanity's future. "Earth to Alex," Richard said, snapping his fingers in front of my face. "We're wrapping up here. Anything else you wanted to add?" I looked at him, then at Mr. Wilson, then at the presentation slides showing our carefully crafted marketing strategy for selling more widgets or services or whatever it was our client provided. It all seemed so small suddenly. "No," I said, gathering my papers. "I think we've covered everything important." After the meeting, Richard cornered me in the hallway. "What was that?" he demanded. "You were completely spaced out in there. If Mr. Wilson hadn't already been impressed by the preliminary work, we could have lost the account." "Sorry," I said, not feeling particularly sorry. "I've had a lot on my mind." "Well, get it off your mind when you're with clients," Richard snapped. "This account is worth 7 figures. Your daydreaming could cost us real money." I nodded, suppressing a laugh at the absurdity of it all. 7 figures seemed insignificant compared to what I now knew was out there. "It won't happen again," I assured him, which was technically true since I was already formulating my resignation letter in my head. The rest of the workday passed in a blur. I went through emails, attended a team meeting, and even managed to finish a report that had been sitting on my desk for days. But it all felt like going through the motions, like an actor playing the role of Alex Mercer, marketing executive, rather than actually being me. By the time I left the office, night had fallen. I declined an invitation from colleagues to grab drinks, preferring to head straight home and try to make sense of my new reality. My apartment felt simultaneously familiar and strange when I entered it. Everything was exactly as I'd left it that morning. Dirty dishes in the sink, half-empty coffee mug on the counter, cat sleeping on the couch. But I was different. The cat, Oliver, opened one eye as I entered, then promptly went back to sleep, completely unconcerned with my existential crisis. Some things at least remained constant. I collapsed onto the couch beside Oliver, who grudgingly made room, and stared at the ceiling. "Open channel," I subvocalized, feeling slightly ridiculous. For a moment nothing happened. Then a voice, Red Marking's voice, spoke directly into my mind. "Alex Mercer, your return to Earth was successful?" "I'm home, if that's what you're asking," I replied silently. "And apparently I can talk to aliens telepathically now, so that's new. The communication implant translates your subvocalized speech," Red Markings explained. "It is not true telepathy, though the distinction may seem academic from your perspective. Whatever it is, it's weird." I reached up to touch the back of my neck, feeling nothing unusual under the skin. "So what now?" "Now you begin your role as cultural liaison," Red Markings said. "Observe your species' reactions to hypothetical scenarios involving extraterrestrial contact. Identify individuals who might be receptive to the truth. Prepare the way for formal disclosure." "And how exactly am I supposed to do that? Just walk up to people and say, 'Hey, what would you do if aliens were real?'" "Subtlety would be advisable," Red Markings replied, and I could almost hear the clicking of its mandibles. "Your profession in information dissemination, marketing as you call it, provides an ideal cover. You have access to data about human psychological responses to new concepts." I considered this. Red Markings wasn't wrong. Marketing was essentially about understanding how people react to new ideas, and packaging those ideas in palatable forms. Still, there was a big difference between selling a new smartphone and preparing humanity for the revelation that they weren't alone in the universe. "I'll need resources," I said. "Access to more people than I can reach through my current job." "Resources will be provided," Red Markings assured me. "Financial arrangements have already been implemented. Check your personal banking interface." Curious, I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. My eyes widened as I saw the balance in my checking account. A 7-figure sum had been deposited that afternoon. "What the? How did you do this?" I demanded. Consortium Financial Integration Specialists have established a corporation that now employs you as a consultant on human cultural analysis, Red Markings explained. The necessary documentation has been created and backdated appropriately. Tax obligations have been accounted for. You created a fake company just like that? I was both impressed and slightly terrified by the implications. It is not fake by Earth legal standards, Red Markings corrected. It is fully registered and compliant with all relevant regulations. It simply serves a purpose beyond its stated commercial objectives. I shook my head in disbelief. And what am I supposed to tell people when they ask how I suddenly became a millionaire overnight? Consulting work for a private research foundation studying future social trends, Red Markings suggested. Close enough to the truth to be sustainable, vague enough to avoid detailed questioning. It was a surreal conversation. Here I was, sitting on my couch with my cat, discussing my new career as an alien cultural liaison with an insectoid being from another world, all while looking at a bank balance that had more zeros than I'd ever seen in my account. This is insane, I muttered, forgetting to subvocalize. Your psychological adjustment period is expected and accounted for, Red Markings responded, apparently hearing me anyway. Many species experience similar disorientation when confronted with sudden paradigm shifts. Gee, thanks for the validation, I said sarcastically. Any other bombshells you want to drop on me tonight? Not at this time, Red Markings replied, missing my sarcasm entirely. A secure information package will be delivered to your residence tomorrow, with additional details about your liaison responsibilities. For now, rest and process your experiences. Yeah, because I'm definitely going to sleep like a baby after today. If sleep difficulties persist, the implant can stimulate natural melatonin production, Red Markings offered helpfully. I think I'll stick with warm milk, thanks. I sighed, rubbing my temples. Anything else I should know before I try to get some semblance of normal back in my life? There was a pause before Red Markings responded. Just one thing. You should be aware that you are not the first human to serve as a liaison. That got my attention. What? Who else? Throughout human history, selected individuals have been appointed as unofficial observers and preparatory agents. Most served brief tenures before memory adjustment. A few served extended periods. Anyone I would know? Historical figures whose sudden insights or inventions accelerated human development in directions beneficial to eventual consortium integration, Red Markings said cryptically. Their identities remain classified. Great. So I wasn't just dealing with aliens, but potentially a secret alien influence on human history. The rabbit hole kept getting deeper. Channel closing for now, Red Markings concluded. Rest, Alex Mercer, your work begins tomorrow. And with that, the presence in my mind faded, leaving me alone with my thoughts once more. Oliver stretched beside me, completely unconcerned with my existential crisis, and padded over to his food bowl, meowing insistently. At least some things are still normal, I muttered, getting up to feed him. Aliens might be real, but cats still demand dinner on time. The next morning, I woke up half convinced I had dreamed the whole thing, but the balance in my bank account remained unnervingly large, and the small tender spot at the base of my skull hadn't disappeared. As promised, a package arrived at my door before I'd even finished my coffee. The delivery person didn't ask for a signature, simply leaving the sleek black case outside my apartment. It had no markings, no shipping labels, nothing to indicate its origin or contents. Inside, I found a tablet-like device unlike anything I'd seen before. It was paper-thin but felt impossibly solid, with a surface that rippled with subtle colors when touched. It activated as soon as I picked it up, projecting a holographic display that hovered a few inches above its surface. Greetings, Liaison Mercer. Read floating text in perfect English. This secure communication device contains your operational parameters and initial objectives. It is keyed to your unique biological signature and will appear as a standard Earth tablet device to anyone else who observes or handles it. I skimmed through the information, which outlined my new role in more detail. According to the consortium, my primary responsibilities included monitoring human media for reactions to potential extraterrestrial scenarios, identifying and cautiously approaching potential secondary liaisons in key positions, subtly introducing concepts that would prepare humans for eventual contact, reporting on social, political, and cultural developments relevant to disclosure planning. The device also contained detailed files on consortium member species, though much of the information was clearly redacted. What I could access painted a picture of a vast, diverse interstellar community with hundreds of intelligent species at various stages of technological development. The Zekthari, I learned, were relatively recent additions to the consortium, having been integrated only a few centuries ago. Their hunter culture made them valuable security operatives, but their traditional practices, like the Great Hunt, had been controversial even before my incident. The device also included a calendar of upcoming consortium observation missions to Earth, showing dozens of planned activities ranging from atmospheric sampling to cultural documentation. I was startled to see that at least 3 such missions were happening today, in different parts of the world. As I continued exploring the device, my phone rang. It was Richard from the office.
"Alex," he said when I answered. "I just got a call from HR.
They said you submitted a resignation letter this morning?"
What the hell?
I blinked in confusion. I hadn't resigned yet. I'd been planning to, but hadn't actually done it. "That's correct," I said, playing along while wondering if this was the consortium's doing. "I've accepted a position with a private research foundation." Just like that? No notice? No transition plan? Richard sounded both angry and hurt. "After 5 years, you're just walking away?" I glanced at the alien device, still projecting information. It was a sudden opportunity. I couldn't pass it up. "Must be some opportunity," Richard grumbled. "HR said your resignation letter mentioned you'd already cleared out your desk, but you were here yesterday and your stuff is still—" He paused. "Actually, they're saying your desk is empty. Did you come in early or something?" "Something like that," I said vaguely, making a mental note to ask red markings about this later. "I'm sorry for the abrupt departure, Richard. It wasn't planned." There was a long silence before Richard sighed. "Well, I can't say I'm not disappointed. You were on track for a promotion next quarter. But good luck, I guess. Whatever this new gig is, it must be pretty special." "It is," I said, finding honesty in the midst of deception. "It's going to change everything." After hanging up, I immediately subvocalized. "Open channel. Red markings, did you send a resignation letter from me?" "Administrative details have been handled to facilitate your transition," Red markings replied promptly. "Your personal effects from your former workplace have been retrieved and will be delivered to your residence today." "You can't just make these decisions for me," I protested. "I need to be involved in these changes to my life." "Efficiency was prioritized," Red markings said, sounding genuinely confused by my objection. "The outcome aligns with your stated intention to resign. Is the method of significance?" "Yes, it's of significance," I snapped. "This is my life you're rearranging. I need to be the one making these changes, not having them made for me." There was a pause before red markings responded. "Your perspective is noted. The consortium's approach to human autonomy may require adjustment. Future life modifications will be proposed rather than implemented without prior consultation." "Thank you," I said, slightly mollified. "And in the future, please don't take my stuff without asking." Acknowledged. Though I should note that the retrieval was conducted by human operatives already associated with the consortium, not by direct alien intervention. That gave me pause. "There are other humans working for you, here on Earth?" "A limited network exists," Red markings confirmed. "Primarily logistics and support personnel. None with your level of clearance or direct communication access. So there were already humans knowingly working for aliens." Of course there were. Why would I be the first? The rabbit hole kept getting deeper. "I need to process all this," I told red markings, "and figure out how to start doing whatever it is I'm supposed to be doing." "Your initial observation period is scheduled for 1 Earth week," red markings said. "During this time, simply absorb information and adjust to your new reality. Active duties will commence after acclimatization." "Fine. Channel closing." The connection faded, and I was left alone with the alien tablet and my thoughts. I spent the rest of the day going through the information on the device, occasionally interrupted by deliveries. First my personal effects from the office, then a series of packages containing high-end computer equipment, communication devices, and even a new wardrobe, all apparently deemed necessary for my new role. By evening, my apartment had been transformed into what looked like a cross between a tech startup office and a government intelligence center. Multiple monitors displayed news feeds, social media trends, and data analyses I didn't yet understand. The alien tablets sat at the center of it all, somehow interfacing with the Earth technology despite their vastly different origins. As I sat amid this new reality, sipping a beer and trying to make sense of it all, I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of my situation. 3 days ago, I had been a normal marketing executive whose biggest concern was making a client meeting on time. Now I was humanity's unwitting ambassador to the stars, preparing Earth for a truth that would forever change our understanding of our place in the universe. All because I'd refused to be prey. The next few months were a crash course in interstellar diplomacy, covert operations, and the mind-bending complexity of the consortium structure. I learned that what I had experienced, Being hunted on an alien game preserve was just one small, controversial aspect of a civilization that spanned thousands of worlds and included species so diverse that some couldn't even perceive others without technological assistance. My daily routine took on a surreal quality. I would wake up, check reports from automated monitoring systems tracking Earth media for alien-related content, send assessments to red markings, and then venture out into the world to observe humanity with new eyes. I began to notice things I'd never seen before. Subtle signs of consortium observation posts disguised as ordinary Earth structures, other humans who moved with the slightly too perfect precision of those who might be liaisons like myself, and patterns in technological development that suggested guided innovation rather than natural progression. The consortium wasn't controlling humanity, that much became clear. But they were watching, studying, occasionally nudging, and preparing for the day when Earth would join the interstellar community. My first active assignment came 3 months after my return. Red markings directed me to approach a promising candidate for a secondary liaison, a quantum physicist whose work was inadvertently bringing human science dangerously close to discovering principles that could detect consortium observation vessels. Dr. Eliza Warner is approaching a breakthrough that the consortium would prefer to delay until formal contact protocols are initiated. Red markings explained. Your task is to subtly redirect her research without compromising its scientific validity. And how exactly am I supposed to do that? I asked, reviewing the file on Dr. Warner. I'm a marketing executive, not a quantum physicist. Your cover as a representative of a research foundation provides the necessary access, Red markings explained. Technical guidance will be provided through your implant during interactions. And so I found myself sitting across from a brilliant scientist in her university office, pretending to be interested in funding her research, while actually trying to steer her away from accidentally exposing the alien presence on Earth. Your work on quantum field fluctuations is fascinating, I said, repeating the words red markings fed directly into my mind, particularly your hypothesis about detectable patterns in seemingly random quantum noise. Dr. Warner's eyes lit up. Exactly. Traditional models treat quantum fluctuations as entirely random, but my team has identified what appear to be organized patterns under specific conditions. It's as if something is occasionally imposing order on quantum chaos. That something, I knew from my briefing, was the energy signature of consortium observation devices operating in Earth's vicinity. Have you considered that these patterns might be artifacts of your detection methodology? I suggested, again channeling red markings' words. Perhaps a resonance effect within your equipment rather than an external phenomenon. Dr. Warner frowned thoughtfully. We've controlled for instrumentation effects, but... She trailed off, making a note. You know, that's an interesting angle we haven't fully explored. If the quantum vacuum itself is interacting with our detection systems in ways we haven't accounted for... I could feel red marking's satisfaction through our connection as Dr. Warner began theorizing along safer lines. Ones that would lead to valuable scientific discoveries, but wouldn't accidentally reveal the alien presence just yet. As I left her office with a promise of funding, which the consortium would actually provide, furthering her research in controlled directions, I felt a complex mix of emotions. On one hand, I was essentially manipulating a brilliant scientist, diverting her from a truth she had almost grasped. On the other hand, I was helping prepare humanity for a revelation that would come when we were ready, rather than stumbling into it unprepared. The intervention was successful, red markings confirmed as I drove away from the university. Dr. Warner's revised approach will yield significant advances in quantum field theory, while avoiding premature detection capabilities. A beneficial outcome for both her career and consortium security protocols. Still feels dishonest, I muttered. Consider the alternative, red markings suggested. Uncontrolled discovery of extraterrestrial observation technology by a world still fraught with geopolitical tensions and nuclear arsenals. Historical modeling suggests a 73.4% probability of catastrophic response scenarios. So you say, I replied, unconvinced. But shouldn't humanity get to make its own choices, even if they're bad ones? A philosophical question the consortium has debated for millennia, red markings acknowledged. The policy of graduated disclosure represents a compromise between complete non-interference and unrestricted contact. It is imperfect, but it has successfully integrated 17 previously isolated species without civilizational collapse. That was the pattern of our relationship. Me questioning the ethics of what I was doing, red markings providing the consortium's pragmatic justification, and both of us continuing our peculiar partnership despite our misgivings. As the months passed, my assignments grew more varied and complex. I redirected research here, introduced concepts there, always working at the edges of human awareness, preparing the collective unconscious for the truth that was coming. I identified other potential liaisons, a science fiction author whose stories could normalize certain aspects of alien contact, a political advisor who could help shape policy discussions about extraterrestrial life, a religious leader open to broader cosmological perspectives. Some were approached directly, others influenced more subtly, all becoming unwitting participants in humanity's preparation for a new era. Throughout it all, I maintained regular communication with Red Markings, who I came to realize was more than just my handler. It was learning from me as much as I was learning from it, our perspectives shifting through continued exposure to each other's thought patterns.
Your species' capacity for adaptation continues to surprise the consortium analysts, Red Markings told me during one of our regular debriefings.
The simulation models consistently underestimate how quickly humans incorporate new paradigms into their worldview. We've had practice, I replied. Our world changes so fast that adaptability is practically a survival trait. A trait that will serve you well in the wider galaxy, Red Markings agreed. Many species require generations to adjust to paradigm shifts that humans navigate in decades. It was almost a compliment, coming from a being whose civilization measured its history in millennia rather than centuries. Nearly a year after my abduction and unexpected career change, Red Markings informed me of a significant development. The Consortium Council has voted to accelerate the disclosure timeline, it announced during our regular communication. Recent developments in Earth's climate situation and technological trajectory have created what the Temporal Dynamics Division calls a critical juncture. Meaning what exactly? I asked, looking out the window of my new high-rise apartment, funded by my mysterious consulting work.
Meaning that formal first contact will be initiated within 1 Earth year, rather than the previously established 5-year timeline. I nearly choked on my coffee.
1 year? That's soon. Are we ready?
Readiness is relative, Red Markings replied pragmatically. The Council believes that technological assistance with your climate crisis now outweighs the risks of premature integration. Preparations must be accelerated accordingly.
What does that mean for me? It means, Alex Mercer, that you are being promoted. Your status as an unofficial cultural liaison is being upgraded to official first contact preparatory agent. You will be the primary human interface for the contact delegation when they arrive. I set down my coffee cup with unsteady hands. That's a lot of responsibility. Indeed, but you have demonstrated exceptional aptitude in your current role.
Your understanding of both human psychology and consortium protocols makes you uniquely qualified.
And if I say no? Red Markings was silent for a moment. Then another would be chosen, but they would lack your specific experience and insights. The probability of successful integration would decrease by approximately 22.7%. No pressure then. When do I start this upgraded role? Immediately. A consortium diplomatic vessel will arrive in orbit within the month. You will be transported aboard for comprehensive briefing and preparation. The vessel will remain cloaked while preparations continue on Earth. And what exactly will these preparations involve? I asked, already imagining the countless ways this could go wrong. Targeted disclosure to key Earth governmental representatives, establishment of secure communication protocols, preparation of cultural exchange materials, coordination of the public announcement strategy. Red Markings paused. And, most critically, the selection of Earth's initial diplomatic delegation to the consortium. You want me to pick the humans who will represent Earth to the galaxy? I laughed incredulously. Based on what criteria? Based on your understanding of who among your species can best navigate this transition with wisdom, adaptability, and stability, Red Markings said simply. The consortium has extensive psychological profiles of Earth's political and scientific leaders, but you have something our analysis lacks. What's that? Intuition about your own kind, an understanding that transcends data points. If an insectoid alien could sound earnest, Red Markings managed it.
You have shown this quality repeatedly in your liaison work. I walked to the window, looking out at the city below. Millions of humans going about their lives, completely unaware that their understanding of reality was about to be fundamentally altered.
1 year, I murmured. 1 year until everything changes. Indeed. The question is whether you will help guide that change. I thought about everything that had happened since that rainy Tuesday morning when I'd been abducted. The fear, the fighting, the strange new purpose I'd found. I thought about the Zekthari hunters I'd killed, the bizarre alliance I'd formed with Red Markings, and the secret work I'd been doing. Most of all, I thought about what first contact would mean for humanity. Terror, certainly at first. Confusion. Wonder. A fundamental reorganization of our place in the cosmos. but also opportunity, new knowledge, new technologies, new possibilities. All because I'd refused to be prey. "I'll do it," I said finally, "but I want something in return." "The consortium has already provided substantial resources," Red Markings began. "Not for me," I interrupted. "For humanity. I want a guarantee that Earth enters the consortium as an equal member, not as a junior partner or a protectorate. Full voting rights from day one." Red Markings was silent for several moments. "That is unprecedented. New species typically undergo a probationary period of at least one standard galactic cycle before attaining full membership status." "Unprecedented like a prey species hunting its hunters?" I countered. "Earth enters as an equal, or you find yourself another first contact preparatory agent." More silence, longer this time. I could almost feel Red Markings consulting with higher authorities through whatever communication system it used. "The Council will require convincing," it said finally, "but your argument has merit. Your species has already demonstrated exceptional qualities that might justify special consideration." "Not special consideration," I corrected. "Equal consideration, that's the whole point." "I will advocate for your position," Red Markings promised. "The final decision remains with the Council, but as the official liaison to Earth, my recommendation carries significant weight." It wasn't a guarantee, but it was a start. "When do I meet this diplomatic vessel?" 3 Earth days from now. Prepare for extraction from your current location at 0200 hours. The process will be similar to your initial abduction, though considerably more comfortable." "Fantastic," I muttered, looking forward to being turned inside out again. "Refinements have been made to the matter transportation process," Red Markings assured me. "You will experience minimal discomfort." "I'll hold you to that," I said. "Channel closing." As the connection faded, I looked around my apartment, at the high-tech monitoring equipment, the alien tablet, the life I'd built over the past year as humanity's secret ambassador to the stars. In 3 days, I'd be taking the next step on this bizarre journey, helping to orchestrate the most significant event in human history. All because I'd refused to die on an alien game preserve. Life really does take the strangest turns. The diplomatic vessel was nothing like the utilitarian hunter ship that had first transported me. Where that had been functional and Spartan, this was elegant and almost organic in design. Corridors curved gracefully, lighting adjusted automatically to occupant preferences, and the entire structure hummed with a vibration that felt almost alive. Red Markings met me in what I assumed was a reception area, though it lacked any furniture recognizable as such. Instead, the room featured abstract sculptural forms that somehow served as both art and functional spaces. "Alex Mercer," Red Markings greeted me, its mandibles clicking in what I now recognized as a gesture of respect. "Welcome aboard the diplomatic vessel Harmonious Exchange." "Nice place," I commented, looking around. "A bit more upscale than the hunter ship." "The Zikthari vessels are designed for utility," Red Markings explained. "Diplomatic vessels must accommodate dozens of species with vastly different physiological and psychological needs." As if to illustrate this point, a being floated past us, literally floated with no visible means of propulsion. It resembled a translucent jellyfish about the size of a beach ball, pulsing with internal lights that formed complex patterns. It acknowledged us with a flash of colors before continuing on its way. "A luminary delegate," Red Markings explained. "They communicate primarily through bioluminescent patterns. Their species evolved in the upper atmosphere of a gas giant." "And they're part of the same civilization as you?" I asked, watching the jellyfish-like being disappear around a corner. "The consortium is not a singular civilization, but a cooperative framework linking many diverse civilizations," Red Markings corrected. "Unity through diversity is our foundational principle." "Sounds like a brochure slogan," I commented. "An accurate observation. We do indeed have informational materials that use this phrase." Red Markings led me through the curving corridors. "The delegation awaiting you represents 7 of the consortium's founding species. They are eager to meet the human who changed our classification protocols." 7 different alien species, I murmured. "And I'm humanity's representative." "No pressure. You will find them curious, but not judgmental," Red Markings assured me. "Many remember their own species' first contact experiences. All understand the significance of this transition period." We entered a large circular chamber with a domed ceiling that appeared to show the actual space outside the ship, Earth hanging like a blue marble against the black backdrop of the cosmos. Around the room's perimeter were various seating arrangements, each seemingly designed for different physiologies. And there were the aliens, 7 beings so diverse in form and function that they barely seemed to belong to the same universe,
let alone the same political entity. One resembled a tall, slender humanoid with iridescent skin that shifted colors like an octopus. Another was a bulky, crystalline entity that clicked and chimed as it moved. A third looked like a collection of metallic spheres arranged in a complex, three-dimensional pattern, hovering above the floor. The fourth was a furred, six-limbed creature with eyes arranged in a ring around what I assumed was its head. The fifth was so amorphous and fluid that I couldn't determine its actual shape. The sixth was tiny, no larger than my hand, but projected a holographic avatar of much larger proportions around itself. And the seventh? Well, the seventh I couldn't actually see, but red markings gestured to an empty space and addressed it respectfully, so I assumed something was there, just not perceptible to human senses. "Honored representatives," red markings announced, "I present Alex Mercer of Earth, First Contact Preparatory Agent and Designated Human Liaison." The iridescent humanoid stepped forward, its skin cycling through blues and greens in what seemed like a formal pattern. "We greet you, Alex Mercer of Earth," it said in a melodious voice that seemed to come from all around rather than from the being itself. "I am Coordinator Thal of the Aurorans, current speaker for this contact delegation." I swallowed hard, suddenly acutely aware that I was making first contact on behalf of my entire species. "I'm honored to meet you, Coordinator Thal, and all of you," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "I hope I can represent Earth appropriately during this historic time." "Your apprehension is natural but unnecessary," Thal assured me, skin shifting to soothing patterns of blue. "This chamber and all our interactions are being recorded for Earth's historical archives. Someday, your descendants will study this moment as we study our own first contacts." "Great." "No pressure at all. I understand you're here to prepare for formal contact with Earth governments," I said, focusing on the practical aspects. "How exactly will that work?" "The protocol has been refined over thousands of integration events," Thal explained, gesturing for me to take a seat in what appeared to be a human-compatible chair. "Initial contact is made with a small group of governmental representatives from major powers, followed by a coordinated global announcement. Technical, scientific, and cultural exchange begins immediately thereafter." The crystalline entity clicked and chimed, and a translation followed. "The critical phase is selecting the initial contact group. Individuals who can process paradigm-shifting information without destabilizing reactions." "That's apparently my job," I said. "Picking the humans least likely to panic or start World War III when they learn aliens are real." The tiny being with the large holographic avatar spoke in a surprisingly deep voice. "Your species' fractured governance system presents unique challenges. Most contact candidates have unified planetary administrations, or at most a few competing power blocks. Earth has nearly 200 sovereign nations, thousands of distinct cultures, and enough nuclear weapons to destroy ourselves several times over," I acknowledged. "We're complicated. Complexity breeds resilience," observed the collection of floating metallic spheres. "Your diversity may prove advantageous during integration." Over the next several hours, the delegation outlined the contact protocol in exhaustive detail. I would select 20 human representatives, political leaders, scientists, religious figures, and cultural icons from around the world. They would be brought aboard the diplomatic vessel for initial briefing and preparation, then return to Earth to help coordinate the global announcement. The timeline was aggressive: 3 months to select the representatives, 2 months for their preparation, and then the moment of truth, worldwide disclosure of the existence of intelligent extraterrestrial life, and Earth's invitation to join the Galactic Consortium. "And what if something goes wrong?" I asked. "What if the public reacts badly?" The amorphous fluid entity rippled in what might have been its version of a shrug. "Chaos is always possible, but consortium statistical models indicate an 83.7% probability of successful integration with minimal disruption." "Those don't sound like great odds when the fate of my entire species is at stake," I pointed out. "Actually, they're the highest prediction for any contact event in consortium history," Thal said, its skin shifting to patterns of gold and purple that somehow conveyed pride. "Your species has been preparing itself for this moment through your fiction, your science, and your philosophy for generations. And through the work of previous liaisons," red markings added. "Your predecessors laid important groundwork, even if most were unaware of their role in the larger process." As the meeting continued, I found myself overwhelmed by the scope of what was happening. This wasn't just about me anymore, or even about the strange journey that had brought me here. This was about all of humanity standing on the threshold of a new era. When the formal briefing concluded, red markings escorted me to quarters that had been prepared for my extended stay aboard the vessel. The room was a curious blend of familiar Earth amenities and alien technologies.
as if someone had attempted to recreate a luxury hotel suite based on a description rather than first-hand experience. You will reside here during the preparation phase, red markings explained. The environmental systems have been calibrated to Earth norms, and the nutrition processors have been programmed with human dietary requirements. How long will I be staying? I asked, examining what appeared to be a food synthesizer built into the wall. Initially for 1 Earth week while you receive comprehensive briefing on consortium species, protocols, and technologies, red markings said. Then you will return to Earth to begin the representative selection process, with regular visits to the vessel for coordination meetings. I sat on the bed, which was surprisingly comfortable despite looking nothing like Earth furniture. This is really happening, isn't it? After all the secrecy and preparation, we're actually going to tell humanity that aliens exist. Indeed, red markings confirmed, its mandibles clicking thoughtfully. A moment my species anticipated for centuries before our own contact event. The transition from isolated planetary civilization to galactic participant is profound. How did your people handle it? I asked, genuinely curious. I realized I knew almost nothing about red marking's own species despite our year of working together. With less composure than we like to admit in our historical records, red markings said, and I could have sworn there was humor in its translated voice. Our religious institutions experienced particular difficulty reconciling established doctrines with cosmic realities. I imagine many Earth religions will have similar challenges, I noted. Perhaps, but your species has a remarkable capacity for theological flexibility when necessary. Red markings moved toward the door. Rest now. Your formal briefing begins in 6 hours. After red markings left, I lay back on the alien bed, staring at the ceiling, which appeared to be displaying a real-time view of Earth below us. My home, my species, all blissfully unaware that their universe was about to expand beyond anything they'd imagined. And I, Alex Mercer, formerly a marketing executive whose greatest concern had been making client meetings on time, was the unlikely catalyst for this monumental change. All because I'd refused to be prey. The selection process was the hardest thing I'd ever done. How do you choose 20 humans to represent an entire species for the most important first impression in history? I started with obvious candidates. The Secretary General of the United Nations, the directors of major space agencies, Nobel laureates in relevant fields. But the delegation had been clear. We needed not just title holders, but individuals with the psychological stability and intellectual flexibility to process a paradigm shift of this magnitude. Many who looked good on paper failed the psychological profiling the consortium provided. World leaders who appeared statesmanlike in public proved to have concerning authoritarian tendencies in private. Brilliant scientists sometimes lacked the emotional intelligence needed for cross-species communication. In the end, my list included some surprises. A philosophy professor from Kenya whose work on cosmic ethics had prepared her conceptually for extraterrestrial contact. A retired astronaut whose experiences had given him a perspective few humans shared. A teenage climate activist whose moral clarity cut through political noise. An indigenous elder whose cultural traditions already incorporated sophisticated concepts of humanity's place in a larger cosmic context. Each selection required careful background research, psychological assessment, and ultimately, a gut feeling I couldn't quite explain, but which red markings assured me was a valuable form of human intuition. The approach phase was delicate. We couldn't simply abduct these people as I had been. Instead, I made initial contact under my cover as a representative of a global research foundation, gauging reactions before gradually revealing more. Some thought I was crazy at first. Others assumed it was an elaborate prank or psychological experiment. A few, surprisingly, seemed almost to have been waiting for this moment, accepting the revelation with a calm that bordered on prescient. Dr. Eleanor Chen, the philosophy professor, simply smiled when I finally revealed the full truth and said, "I've been writing about this possibility for decades. It would have been more surprising if we were alone." Admiral Mikhail Petrov, the retired Russian cosmonaut, laughed and said in his heavily accented English, "In space, I always felt we were being watched. Now I know I was right." Not all reactions were so measured. The Brazilian environmental minister needed 3 meetings before she stopped thinking I was delusional. The Japanese quantum physicist demanded proof, which required arranging a controlled demonstration of consortium technology that left him simultaneously terrified and exhilarated. Gradually, over 2 intensive months, I assembled my 20 representatives, a diverse group spanning continents, disciplines, religions, and ideologies, united only by their capacity to face the unknown with courage and curiosity rather than fear. The day they were all brought aboard the diplomatic vessel was one I'll never forget.
20 humans, strangers to each other, united by their selection for the most important delegation in human history. They stood in the same circular chamber where I had first met the consortium representatives, staring in wonder at the aliens before them, and at Earth, hanging in space through the transparent ceiling. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, feeling the weight of the moment, "welcome to the diplomatic vessel Harmonious Exchange. You have been selected to represent humanity in our first official contact with the Galactic Consortium, a cooperative of intelligent species who have been observing Earth for centuries." I gestured to the assembled alien delegates. "These representatives will be your guides through the coming weeks as you learn about their civilizations, technologies, and the process by which Earth may join the wider galactic community." Coordinator Tal stepped forward, its skin shimmering with formal patterns of welcome. "Humans of Earth," it said in that melodious voice. "This moment has been anticipated by the consortium for generations. Your species stands at a critical juncture, ready to take your place among the civilizations of our galaxy." What followed was a carefully choreographed introduction to the reality these 20 humans would soon help reveal to the rest of their species. The initial shock gave way to questions. Thousands of questions about consortium history, alien biology, interstellar travel, and the implications for Earth's future. Admiral Petrov wanted to know about propulsion systems. Dr. Chen inquired about ethical frameworks across species. The climate activists demanded information about environmental technologies. The religious leaders sought to understand how other species had reconciled faith with cosmic reality. Through it all, I watched with a strange mixture of pride and trepidation. These humans, my fellow humans, were rising to an impossible occasion with grace and intelligence that justified my selection of them. Over the next weeks, they underwent intensive briefing on everything they would need to know to help Earth navigate first contact. They practiced cross-species communication, learned about consortium governance structures, and began drafting the frameworks for Earth's integration. Most importantly, they helped design the disclosure protocol, the carefully sequenced revelation that would introduce humanity to the reality of extraterrestrial intelligence. The plan they developed was elegant in its simplicity. First, a coordinated announcement from Earth's major governments, revealing the existence of extraterrestrial contact. Simultaneously, the diplomatic vessel would decloak in Earth orbit, visible to anyone with even basic telescopes or binoculars. The 20 representatives would appear alongside their respective governmental leaders, providing consistency and continuity to the announcement. Scientific data would be released immediately to credible research institutions worldwide, allowing independent verification of the claims. And I would step forward publicly as the unlikely first contact, the ordinary human who had accidentally become humanity's ambassador to the stars. As the day of disclosure approached, tension aboard the vessel mounted. The representatives, now fully briefed and prepared, would be returned to Earth 24 hours before the announcement to take their positions. I would remain aboard until the last moment, coordinating between the consortium delegation and the human representatives. The night before they departed, we gathered for a final meal together. The mood was solemn but hopeful. 20 humans carrying the weight of species-altering knowledge, preparing to share it with their fellow humans. Dr. Chen raised her glass in a toast. "To tomorrow," she said simply, "when everything changes." "To humanity's future among the stars," added Admiral Petrov. I looked around at these people who had become something between colleagues and friends over our intense weeks together. "To all of you," I said, "the right people, at the right moment in history." As they departed the next morning, returning to Earth to prepare for their roles in the announcement, I felt a curious emptiness. For weeks, we had been united in purpose, sharing this monumental secret. Now they were gone, and I was once again alone with the aliens who had so drastically altered my life. "They will perform admirably," Red Markings assured me, sensing my mood. "Your selections were optimal." "Thanks for the vote of confidence," I said, watching the shuttle depart for Earth. "But tomorrow isn't about them or me or even the consortium. It's about 7 billion humans whose understanding of reality is about to be fundamentally altered." Indeed. Red Marking's mandibles clicked contemplatively. "A moment unprecedented in your species' history. And all because I refused to die properly when I was supposed to," I added with grim humor. "The consortium has long recognized the role of chance in evolutionary and historical processes," Red Markings observed. "But your case suggests something more. A pattern emerging from chaos, perhaps. Or just dumb luck and stubbornness," I suggested. "Perhaps those are simply what we call pattern and purpose when we cannot yet perceive their full dimensions," Red Markings replied.
It was perhaps the most philosophical thing I'd ever heard the alien say, and it left me wondering how much our year of interaction had changed both of us. Disclosure Day. The diplomatic vessel moved into a more visible orbit, though still cloaked for the moment. From the command center, I watched as the 20 representatives took their positions alongside government officials around the world, preparing for the synchronized announcement. The timing had been carefully calculated, broadcast during daylight hours in as many major population centers as possible. The announcement would begin at 1200 GMT, with simultaneous broadcasts from Washington, Moscow, Beijing, New Delhi, Brasilia, and other capitals. As the moment approached, red markings joined me at the viewing portal. The Council has considered your request regarding Earth's membership status. It said without preamble. I turned from the view of Earth below. And? Your argument was persuasive. Earth will be offered full membership status, effective immediately upon formal acceptance. A wave of relief washed over me. Thank you. Do not thank me, red markings said. It was your actions that convinced the Council. The manner in which you confronted the hunting party demonstrated qualities the Consortium values highly: adaptability, resourcefulness, and a certain moral clarity even in extreme circumstances. I just didn't want to die, I said honestly. Yet in saving yourself, you changed the destiny of your species. Red markings' mandibles clicked in what I now recognized as its version of thoughtful contemplation. There is a symmetry there that even the most skeptical council members found compelling. On the monitors around us, I could see the broadcast preparations nearing completion. Presidents, prime ministers, and other world leaders were taking their positions, flanked by the representatives we had selected and briefed. It's time, said Coordinator Tal, entering the command center with the other delegation members. Deactivating cloaking field. Around the world, telescopes, radar systems, and naked eyes would now be able to detect the massive diplomatic vessel in Earth orbit. The first tangible evidence that humans were not alone in the universe. On the monitors, I watched as the world leaders began their carefully coordinated announcements. The words varied by language and culture, but the message was the same. People of Earth, today we share momentous news. After centuries of questioning our place in the cosmos, we can now confirm that humanity is not alone. We have made contact with an interstellar community of intelligent civilizations known as the Galactic Consortium. I watched the faces of newscasters as they received the information, their expressions shifting from confusion to shock to wonder. I saw crowds gathering in city squares, people looking up at the sky, pointing at the now visible vessel overhead. Reaction patterns within predicted parameters, reported one of the consortium technicians, monitoring global communications and social media. Initial shock transitioning to curiosity and wonder in approximately 68% of monitored communications. There was fear too, of course. Conspiracy theories bloomed instantly. Religious leaders not included in the disclosure planning issued contradictory statements. Military forces around the world went on high alert. But overwhelmingly, what I saw on those screens was something I hadn't fully expected: hope. Faces upturned to the sky with expressions not of terror but of possibility. It is time for your part, Tal said to me. Are you prepared? I nodded, suddenly dry-mouthed. According to the disclosure protocol, I would now be transported to the United Nations headquarters in New York, where I would address the hastily convened General Assembly as humanity's first unofficial ambassador to the stars. Me, Alex Mercer, the marketing executive who had missed a meeting because he'd been abducted by alien hunters. I'm ready, I said, straightening my suit, custom-made for this occasion by the consortium's fabrication systems. Remember, red markings said as I stepped onto the transport platform, you have already succeeded where no one expected success. This address is merely a formality. Easy for you to say, I muttered. You're not about to give the most important speech in human history. Red markings' mandibles clicked in what I now recognized as its version of laughter. Perhaps not, but I have witnessed you hunt the hunters. This should be considerably simpler. The transport activated, and the familiar sensation of being turned inside out washed over me. Though red markings had been right, the refined system was much less uncomfortable than my original abduction. When my vision cleared, I was standing backstage at the United Nations General Assembly Hall. Dr. Chen was waiting for me, her face tight with tension but her eyes bright with excitement. They're ready for you, she said. Every nation, every leader, every news outlet on Earth, no pressure. Thanks, I said dryly. How's it going out there? Better than we dared hope, she replied. The initial shock is giving way to curiosity faster than our models predicted. Humans are adapting. We're good at that, I said. It's kind of our thing. A UN official approached, looking harried but professional. Mr. Mercer, you're on in 30 seconds. I nodded, taking a deep breath. Time to make history, I guess. You already did, Dr. Chen reminded me. The day you refused to be prey. As I walked out onto the stage, facing the assembled representatives of nearly every nation on Earth and the cameras broadcasting to billions of humans around the world, I thought about that rainy Tuesday morning that seemed a lifetime ago. How one moment of defiance had cascaded into this world-changing event. How my refusal to accept the role assigned to me had altered the destiny of my entire species. I stepped up to the podium, looked out at the sea of stunned, curious, hopeful faces, and began. My name is Alex Mercer. A little over a year ago, I was abducted by aliens who intended to hunt me for sport. Today I stand before you as humanity's first unofficial ambassador to the stars. This is the story of how we as a species went from being classified as prey to being recognized as equals in the cosmic community. It begins, as so many human stories do, with stubborn refusal to accept the limitations others would place upon us. As I spoke, I could feel the weight of the moment, the billions of humans whose understanding of reality was forever changing, the millennia of human history culminating in this pivot point, the future stretching out before us filled with possibilities we had barely begun to imagine. All because one ordinary human had refused to be prey. All because I had proven what humanity has always known in its collective heart. We are not the hunted. We are the apex predators. And the stars themselves would soon learn what that truly means.